Welcome to Focus 15 Spanish with the Spanish Grammar Guy. I'm here to help you with your Spanish grammar. So in this video, we're going to look at passive sentences in Spanish and how they are constructed because they can be a little tricky. Let's first start by looking at an active sentence with a regular construction of a subject, a verb, and an object. You'll get what I mean with this example now. El turismo ha destruido las zonas costeras. So this is a simple sentence where the subject is tourism, the verb is destruir, in this case it's in the perfect tense, and the object is the coastal areas. Just as a reminder, the subject is performing the action of the verb, to destroy in this case, while the object is receiving the action of the verb, being destroyed. Okay. So, you can't just say tourism has destroyed on its own, as it doesn't make sense. You need an object here. What has it destroyed? But you can say coastal areas have been destroyed on its own, without saying how. It makes sense. You can also say how if you want to, but you don't need to. So this is a passive sentence. Coastal areas have been destroyed is passive. Tourism has destroyed is passive. So let's see this passive sentence in Spanish. Las zonas costeras han sido destruidas. So what we notice here is that the object of the active sentence, las zonas costeras, now becomes the subject of the passive sentence. It just switches round. If we want to add how the coastal zones were destroyed, we add that on at the end using por, just like this. Las zonas costeras han sido destruidas por el turismo. So to make this passive sentence, what we are doing is using the verb ser, han sido in this case, and then the past participle of the verb destruir. But the past participle here is treated like an adjective. So it has to agree in gender and number with the thing it's describing, las zonas costeras, which in this case is feminine and plural. So we have to say destruidas. This is similar to English, which also uses the verb to be and the past participle have been destroyed in this case. So that's one way to create the passive in Spanish, and probably the way most English speakers do it naturally, as it's like the English construction. So this way of forming the Spanish is more common in written language, newspaper articles, for example, or in more formal speech. But there is another way to create the passive in Spanish, which is more commonly used in Spanish everyday speech, and which is more difficult for English speakers because it uses that little word se, which is used for many different things in Spanish. So let's look at how we form the same passive Spanish using se. Well, it's actually very easy. Instead of using the verb ser plus the past participle as before, we simply use se at the beginning of the sentence, then use an active construction like this, for example. Se han destruido las zonas costeras. Coastal areas have been destroyed. That makes sense. We don't have to say how. It makes sense on its own. So the verb, han destruido, refers to the coastal areas, which is why it's in the third person plural. But if we do use this construction, we shouldn't then use the word por and then how the coastal areas have been destroyed. So this use of the passive means we're not interested in what caused that destruction. If we want to say that, then we use the other passive construction with the verb ser that we just talked about. Las zonas costeras han sido destruidas por el turismo. We can't really say se han destruido las zonas costeras por el turismo? Well, we could, back in the 16th and 17th centuries, but even I'm not that old. It's very old-fashioned and considered ungrammatical to say that now, and it sounds very awkward. So let's look at some more examples of creating the passive with se, and you'll see how easy it really is. For example, if we want to say that the book was published, that's a passive sentence, we could say el libro fue publicado, using the passive with the verb ser, and that's very much like the English construction, so more natural to an English speaker. But if we want to sound more natural in everyday speech, then we have to use the passive with se. So simply put se at the beginning of the sentence, then add the verb in the correct form. In this case, it's the preterite tense, it was published, past tense, preterite. Then add the subject, el libro. So it becomes se publicó el libro. That's not difficult. Let's do another. What if we want to say ports will be built? This is a passive construction in English using the future tense of the verb to be. So we simply put the word se at the beginning, then add the verb. In this case, let's use the verb construir in the future tense, then the word for ports, puertos. So it becomes se construirán puertos. Okay, let's try one more example to finish up here. Translate this sentence into both types of passive, first using the verb ser and then the past participle, and then using the word se. Here's the example. The problems were solved. Pause the video if you need to think about the answer. And here's the first one using the verb ser plus the past participle. Los problemas fueron solucionados. Okay? And then using se. Okay? Here it is. Se solucionaron los problemas. There. Not too difficult. So that's how to use the passive in Spanish, using both ser and the past participle, or using se. I hope that's helped. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.